Hello and welcome to today's author webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jennifer and I'm part of the Learning and Content Management team. Joining from me from the Learning and Content Management team are my colleagues Anita, Sridevi, Chandani, and Radhika. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Firstly, please take a few moments to complete the poll you see on your screens. If you have a question at any time, please use the Q&A option to send your questions, and we will try to answer as many as possible during the session today. In the Q&A channel, if we cannot answer all of the questions, we will reply to you directly after the session unless you post the question anonymously. We will also cover some of the questions at the end of the session today. For the best view, you may wish to drag the central bar on your screen to the right to enlarge the screen that we are sharing. And you may also wish to enable live transcripts via the bar on the bottom of your screen. Finally, a session is being recorded and you will be sent a link when the recording is ready. Now let's quickly get started and take a look at our agenda for today. So we will be starting by giving you an overview of the author submission process in Editorial Manager. Please note that the steps may vary depending upon the journal configuration and the type of article being submitted. We will also have a look on how to use the declaration tool when submitting a manuscript. Elsevier's declaration tool quickly and easily help authors create a comprehensive statement which incorporates the ICMJE, which is International Committee of Medical Journal Editors Declaration Standards. This declaration tool will produce statement in a Word form that can be uploaded alongside your manuscript, and it will also appear in your published article. Now let's get into Editorial Manager training side and explore the author submission process. Please note that I'm going to be using the training site for the demonstration with dummy users and dummy submissions. So the training site is a good replica of a live environment. But if it looks slightly different to what you see in your profile on a day-to-day basis, then don't worry. It may be due to the rights and permissions granted for each and every role, and it varies according to the journal. So let's get started, and I'm just going to go ahead and flip over to the Editorial Manager training site. Give me a minute there. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen, Anita?
Yes, Jenny, all fine. Can you just increase the font size a little so that it'll be clear for everyone?
Okay. Is this okay?
Yes, fine. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Okay. So now we are in the training site and I have logged in as an author. So before submitting a manuscript, the first thing which all of them authors will have to do is please check the journal requirements via the instructions for authors link right here. And these instructions will contain guidelines on manuscript word counts, file requirements, and other important information for your submission. And so it is important for you to familiarize yourself with the journal. So after looking into the instructions there, the next step would be is to click on submit new manuscript. So if you could see, since this being a training site, there are a couple of manuscripts down there. So please ignore all of them there. So I'm just going to go down right to the bottom of the screen. And you will have to go ahead and click on no start new manuscript. Now, that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and select the one which I have already put down for this webinar. So let me just click on that and get started. So once ready to begin the submission process of your paper, you will click on the submission new manuscript button, and after which you will select the relevant article type right here from the drop down. And if you're submitting it to a special issue, then please make sure that you select the appropriate special issue article type. So it will have the special issue name along with what is the article type there. So you will have to make sure to check that properly in the drop down and select it accordingly. And the next one would be is the journal may request you to link to your ORCID ID. So once you're ready, after you have linked it to your ORCID ID, you may just click on proceed to go to the next step. So the next step would be is to attach all the files you wish to include within your submission. So you can either use the browse option, or you can simply just drag your files here to just put down and attach all of your primary files for the submission. Right here. First, please upload your primary manuscript file. Now, some of the mandatory file types will be indicated with an asterisk. So you can just select on each of the ones which are mandatory, and then you can submit. And if in case, if you would like to submit research data when available, you will be asked to enter the URL where the data is hosted. So you will have to go ahead and give the the depository name, the source of data, and the title of the data set, and also the location. So that's something which you will have to keep in mind while submitting the research data. And in the future, it will also become possible to upload data directly into Mendeley data. So that's coming up. But then for now, you will have to go with this particular setup. For some journals, cover letter is mandatory. So which means the cover letter will also have an asterisk mark there if it's a mandatory one. So how do you put that? So cover letter is a simple, brief business letter designed to introduce your manuscript to a prospective editor. So if the guide for authors or the instructions for authors link does not specify what to include in your cover letter, you may wish to include some of the following items which I'm going to talk about. The first thing would be is to specify special considerations that you would be giving to the paper, if any. If a brief background regarding the research involved and how the data was collected, and any details of any previous or concurrent submissions. It's also useful to provide to the editor-in-chief with any information that will support your submission, like example, original or confirmatory data, relevance, topicality, etc. And add cover letter as mandatory file type. So that's something which you will have to do if you are working on cover letter and if it is mandatory for your particular journal. So that's something which you will have to do. And moving on, for some journals, you will also have declaration of interest as a mandatory file type. We will explain this in more detail in a few minutes, but in either event, such a statement is mandatory from an ethics perspective. We also have a short video on how you can use the declaration tool in Editorial Manager. So we will put that in the chat for you to go ahead and take a look at it when you have some free time. So once you have uploaded all the files which is necessary for the journal, which is the mandatory files, you can just click on proceed. The next step would be is about the general information. So in the general information step, we will have some of the different requirements depending upon the journal, like you may be asked to select the region of origin, the section or category, and also the classifications. So if you could see, I have put down the region of origin, the section and category, and the classification. So after you have done on this, you can just click on proceed. Now, classifications related to submission. Now, what is the difference between classifications and keywords, which most of you would have in your mind? So classifications are fixed terms created for the journal. So they are predetermined by the journal. So you just have to select. But keywords are free text, which the users can add in the manuscript data step. So once you have provided all of these information, just click on proceed. The next step would be is to check on the review preferences. Yeah. So depending upon the journal requirements, you will see options on the review of preferences steps, like you will have an option to request an editor. So you can, select the editor, whoever you want, depending upon the journal configuration. And you will also be asked to suggest and oppose reviewers. So I have put down few suggestions for reviewers there. And please note that these are preferences only, and the editor may or may not use the suggestions. So once you have provided all these necessary information, you can just click on proceed, which will take you to the next step. The next step is about additional information. Now, the additional information step presents you with a questionnaire which the journal uses to collect useful information. So you will have to carefully look into the questionnaire and respond to each of it. So like how I have done right here. So for each of the questions, make sure to check on them and respond. After which you can click on proceed, moving on to the next step, which would be the comments section. Now, the comments section is simply gives you an opportunity to enter any additional comments for the journal office. So these will not appear directly in your submission, but then if you would like to send out anything to the journal office, then you can put them down here. So I'm not going to put anything right here because I don't have any additional comments for my submission right here. So the next one would be is the manuscript data. Now, under the manuscript data step, the system will automatically pull all the data from the manuscript file, and it will pre-populate some fields on the manuscript data step. So that's something which you can see right here. It pre-populates most of my manuscript data like keywords, abstract, authors, and also the funding body right here. So you will have to go ahead and put down each and every information there. And also make sure to enter all the authors in this particular additional information tab. And you should also make sure to, click on this particular edit author there, and you can also put down if the corresponding author has done the whole concept, or if he has done the data validation and things like that. So you will have to go ahead and also select the contributor roles right here. And after you have done on what is the contributor roles for the corresponding author or for the any of the co-author, you can just click on save and come back right here. So please enter all the authors of the submission, including the name, current contact email address, and institution. It is essential to choose the institution from the drop-down. So please make sure to select the institution from the drop-down when you put down the current author list there. Because, in case there are any society discounts, that will reduce your article publishing charges for gold open access. So that's something which you will have to do and select their contributor roles. As I said, you will have to click on edit and go ahead and edit the contributor roles based on each and every author of the manuscript. Now, the next one would be is about co-authors will receive an email confirmation from the journal once they do this particular status and they go ahead and save the details. Now, this is the institution link which I was talking about. Please make sure to choose the institution from the drop down. So while you just start typing your institution, it will appear in the drop down and you can just select it from there. So it will make sure to give you some society discounts, which will reduce your open access charges. So that's something which you will have to do, and make sure you only do it from the drop down there. So that's something for you. Yes, and co-authors will receive an email notification from the journal. So we have also created a video on how the co-author verification video will work, and what are the things the co-author should do pertaining to that aspect. So we will have that in the co-author video there in the chat box for you. You can also refer to that and work accordingly. And you can also reorder the list of authors by just dragging and dropping here like this. In whatever portion you would want as per your manuscript there. So that's something for you. The next one would be is to put down your funding body information right down here, which is pertaining to your research. So if you would like to put down any additional funding source, you can just click on add, or if there isn't any funding information, then just click on funding information is not available. So that's something which you will have to do. And then the final step would be is to build PDF for approval. Now, before this process, for some of the journals, some journals would encourage the authors to view and select appropriate open access publishing options. So they will have some options on the screen before this process, which will have some publishing options for the authors to select. So you will have to go around, check on the options, and then select the one which is appropriate for you. So that's something which you will have to do before moving on to the final step of PDF building. Now, this is exactly where we have landed up on the final page. So the first thing which you will have to do is just ensure to click on the view submission button there and look into the PDF if it is all fine and if it is all good to go there. And if it is all good to go, please ensure to read the ethics in publishing there and the terms and conditions. And if you are good to go, then just click on I accept button there, the tick box, and then come down to say I approve submission. So when you say I approve submission, if in case you haven't linked your ORCID ID, then it might ask you for it, ORCID ID. You can either do it or you can just say proceed without ORCID ID. So yeah, I have to check on my submission there. And after it says good to go, then I will have to click on I accept and then go ahead and say approve. So it's gonna ask me, oh, are you sure you want to approve this? And I say okay. So finally click approve submission, and now your submission is submitted for the journal for consideration. So you will receive an email confirmation. In case if you would like to edit your submission, you will have to contact the journal manager who will be able to update your submission file. So that's something for you to look into, because after this step, you will not be able to do any things to your submission or edit anything to your submission, because after this step, it is only contacting the journal manager on this. If you want more information on the submission process, please watch our author submission process video. So we will have that in the chat session for you, chat link there on author submission process overview. So in this part of today's webinar, we are going to return back to the submission process right now again. And we are going to look into the declaration tool in more detail, which I said earlier. So let me just go back and click on a particular paper and, just start with one there. So if you could go there. So as we mentioned before, for some of the journals, declaration of interest is a mandatory file type. Transparent disclosure of potential competing interest is essential to meet your ethical obligations and nurturing trust in science. Elsevier now offers a declaration tool in Editorial Manager that quickly and easily helps authors a comprehensive statement which incorporates the ICMJE, which is International Committee of Medical Journal Editors Declaration Standards. Now, this particular declaration form can be uploaded as a Word doc alongside your manuscript, and it will also be published in your article. So the declaration tool can be accessed either through the guide for authors link, or it can also be accessed through the attached file steps right here, where it has an hyperlink to the declaration of interest tool. So if you just click on this, it is going to take you to the homepage of the declaration of interest homepage. Now you will be taken to the declaration tool homepage, and you can read further information about declaring your interest. And when ready, you can just begin to declare by scrolling down right there. So I'm just going to click on Start My Declaration. Please note that for some journals, I have nothing to declare button may be present and should obviously only be used to directly generate a statement when you and your co-authors are confident that you have nothing to declare. For other journals where this button is not available, you can indicate that you have nothing to declare in each page, as you will see. When you are ready to begin, you will just have to click on Start My Declaration and get started. So the first one would be is research support for this reported work. So you can declare any support you or any of your co-authors received from certain type of third parties since the initial conception of this research. So please know that you don't need to list any academic institutions or public funding sources from charitable foundations or government agencies here. You will just have to fill in the details of this support by typing the organization name and selecting the relevant financial or non-financial support which you have received. So you may do so by just clicking, just giving the organization name and click on financial support or non-financial support. And you should also put down who has received the support, be it a co-author or a corresponding author. And if in case you have also received another funding source, then you can also add them there just by clicking on the plus symbol there and then adding them there. And you can just go ahead. And if you would like to save the declaration for later and come back to it within the next 30 days, you can just save declaration for later, and you can come back anytime within the next 30 days and do it again. Or if you would like to just proceed, just say next and move on to the other one there. So for now, let me just put the author name there and click on next. There. Okay. So the next one would be is relevant support outside this reported work. So you should disclose if you or any of your co-author have any financial interest or personal relationships related to the subject matter, but not directly to the manuscript. So the time frame for other support is within the last 3 years. So within the last 3 years, if you or your co-author do have any financial interest or personal relationship related to the subject matter, then you will have to disclose them right here. So again, the organization name, the author name, and then the relationship between the author and the organization right there. And if you have anything else there to declare, you can also declare another relationship. And if you would like to save it, you can save declaration for later, or you can proceed with the next steps there. So that's there. So let me just put down the name there. I'm just going to take this off and proceed further. So the next category is about patents and intellectual property. So this page allows you to disclose any relevant patents or copyrights licensed to you or to any of your co-authors. Once you have filled this, you can just go ahead and give your patent information, the license or assignee there, and then proceed on with the next step. So as I said earlier, you will also have a toggle button at the below for each and every category. Again, it depends upon the journal. So if you have there and if you do not have anything to disclose, you just have to, say, I don't have anything to disclose this way, and you can proceed with the next, or you can save the declaration for the later and come back anytime within the next 30 days. So I'm just proceeding further with the next category on other activities. Now, this is the final stage of the declaration tool where you will have to submit any further information that a reader would perceive to have influenced the work that has been covered in the previous pages. So if you have not disclosed anything previously which you would like to put down here, you can put it down right here, and you can just go ahead. If you don't have anything to disclose, as I said earlier, just toggle off the button there and you can just click on. So the next one on B is the summary page, where you will finalize the whole set of declaration, and then you will be good to go to submit and download. Now, right here, you will be offered the option to enter your email address to save your declaration statement. So there are two ways to do it. If you would like to, use this after in the next 30 days, you can just give your email address and get the passcode, and that passcode will be available for you for the next 30 days, where this particular declaration details will be saved, and you can just continue from there. Or if you would not like to do it, and if you would want to do it right away, you can just say, no thanks, I want to download a declaration without saving it. So once you do that, you will see that the declaration details will get saved down, will get downloaded there. So that's something which you can go back to the attach file step, and you can, drag and drop, choose the particular declaration of interest, and the file which has been downloaded, you can either browse it there from there, or you can just drag and drop there. So that's something how you will go ahead and create a document using the information entered, and you can also upload them to the editorial manager as a Word doc. And then finally, as I said earlier, you can also access this using the one-time password on the homepage. So anytime within the next 30 days, you can come back and access it with your one-time password, where you have given your email address, and you can just go ahead, proceed with the declaration of interest, and upload it alongside your paper there. So this is how you use the declaration tool in Editorial Manager. So as I said earlier, we also have created a video on this, and which will be very useful for you when you work on this. So you can take a look at that video on using the declaration tool in Editorial Manager. We will have the support, put that link in the chat for you now. So the last part of the webinar would be is to give you a brief explanation of the various statuses your submission may progress through in Editorial Manager, for which I'll have to flip back to the presentation mode. Just give me a minute there. All clear, Anita?
Yeah, all clear, Jenny.
Great. So an author finishes writing his paper and he submits it to the journal. The system shows the status of the manuscript as manuscript submitted. Based on the workflow of the journal, the editorial office performs a technical check on your manuscript. They will check the manuscript word count, format, figure quality, table quality, etc. The next step is assigning it either to the editor-in-chief or an associate editor for further handling. Journals usually have multiple associate editors who are experts in a particular niche with the broader subject area. So your manuscript will be handled by the editor who has the highest level of understanding and experience with your paper's research topic. The status remains with editor until the editor either makes a decision or invites reviewers. Now, the next step would be is the handling editor has different action choices, makes a desk reject, or sends the paper for revision, or he invites reviewers. The editor conducts initial screening of your paper and accesses it against several criteria such as novelty, priority, and scope. If your paper is a better match for another journal, you may be offered a manuscript transfer. Also, it's possible that your paper does not meet some of the assessment criteria, and then the editor would reject it before going into the peer review. If the editor decides that your paper is a good match for the journal, then he will go ahead and identify 2 or 3 independent reviewers depending upon the journal configuration, and send them an invitation to review your manuscript. When the editor invites reviewers, the status of the manuscript changes to under review. Once the required number of reviewers are received and recommendations were submitted, the status of the manuscript will show as required reviews completed. The handling editor now carefully studies the review reports. It can happen that the referee reports are conflicting, in which case the editor needs to find additional reviewers. When this happens, your submission returns back to under review status. When the editor has received enough high quality feedback from the reviewers, they will begin the decision-making process and move the status to decision in process. The decision may need to be confirmed by multiple editors in some journals, and the manuscript moves back to editor-in-chief's account for final decision. So the editor-in-chief submits his or her decision. The first one would be is revise. The editor who had requested would revise the submission. You will find the details of changes required and deadline for your revision in the decision letter. If it's a accept or reject, the submission process has been completed with either an accept decision or a reject decision. In the case of an accept decision, the manuscript will begin its production process and you will receive further information. And then it's transfer pending. The editor has rejected your paper but has suggested to transfer it. So the editor has recommended the submission be transferred to another journal via our automatic article transfer service, and you are offered a transfer. So in this scenario, we will wait for your response before proceeding, which means the status would be is transfer pending. So once you have accepted the offer, which means the transfer offer, the submission is now transferred to another journal. We have also published a video on submission status explainer, which will explain how your submission process will go through after submitting the manuscript, and the link of the video will now be posted in the chat section, which you can refer as well. So the next slide is about, we have now introduced a submission tracker tool for more than 2,000 plus journals. So once a journal is using submission tracker, an email is being sent to the corresponding author when the first reviewer is invited. As you can see from the screenshot, the email contains a link to the submission tracker landing page where the author can view the status of the review process of submission. Note that the same link will remain active throughout the end-to-end review process. So we expect the same submission tracker tool will be available to all the journals in the near future. So the next screenshot is about the submission tracker landing page for a submission. And this is how it looks. So from here, you can monitor the complete status of the manuscript. As I said, it will be available active throughout the peer review process. Then the next slide is about Did You Know Corner. So for today's Did You Know Corner, we are going to show you about the author guide to editorial manager. And this is a screenshot of how it will look. So to give you in more detail about how it looks, I'm just going to flip over my screen and share the exact link with you on author learning pathway. Just give me a minute there. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Jenny.
Great. So this is the link which we have launched on the author guide to editorial manager, which you can find from the journal article publishing support center in editorial manager. Right here in this guide, you will find learning pathways, which will include instructional videos and also articles. And this will enlighten the learning pathway, and it will also have a lot of author key tasks such as manuscript submission process, how to track the submission status, and so on. So if you could see, we have categories in each of this. And for pre-submission, how do you find a matching journal? What are the open access options? And how would you prepare a manuscript? So for all of it, we also have some articles and we also have videos. And coming down to submission, we also have, again, how would you log in an account and troubleshoot, how you can link with your ORCID, and how would you get started with a new submission and declaration of interest, which we saw today. And what about review and decision? How would I track? How would I know what's happening in the decision making process, and what are the service for rejected manuscripts? And again, in the revision, how would I prepare my revised manuscript? We do have articles and videos. And finally, we also have some additional resources where it will take you to the webinar series page, where we will have recording of all the author webinars there. And we also have some author services, which will take us to the web shop, where you can look in for illustration services, language services, which is currently done by our web shop team. So that's pretty much with the author learning pathway. And so right here, you can see the illustration services and some web shop products, translation services, PhD thesis, language editing services, which all of these is being offered by Elsevier, so which you can also explore. So that's more about how we have the author guide. I hope this is going to be very helpful for you guys to look into each of the categories, and wherever you are in these categories, you can look for those articles and videos accordingly. So pretty much that there. So I'm just moving back to my screen again. So if you would have seen, I have already launched another poll, and that brings us to the end of the webinar today. So after this session, we will send you an email that will contain some helpful links to the webinar recording, and for also some short video guides that will relate directly to this topic. So you would have seen the short poll on the screen now. So please make sure to answer that poll before you leave, before the session finishes, because those answers will help us to deliver more webinars like this. So that's something for you. Before you leave the session, please make sure to submit the poll for us today. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope this session was really helpful. See you next time.